And we are back with third segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this third segment, we are going to be talking about the Nuggets and the Timberwolves series because those two games were played on Friday. And then the last game was played yesterday night. And as similar to how the Knicks and the Pacers series got the script got completely flipped. So did the Nuggets and the Timberwolves series. So the Timberwolves, they went into both games. They were up 2-0. They previously won both of the away games, and now the Denver Nuggets have officially returned the favor, and the series is tied 2-2. So Game 3 was never close. The entirety of the game, the Denver Nuggets completely dominated the Timberwolves. They outscored them in the first, second, third, and fourth quarter of this game. So they outscored them 28-20 in the first, 28-21 in the second, and then 37-25 in the third. And then they tied in the fourth quarter, 24-24. And final score was 117-90. And Jokic and Jamal, they played a lot better in the Timberwolves arena than they did in their own home court. This is starting to look like a repeat of the Dallas versus the Clippers series all the way back in 2021 when both of the teams didn't win a home game up until Game 7. So there is a chance that could happen again. There is a very, very good chance that could happen again. However, there's also a chance that the Denver Nuggets could take advantage of the home court going into Game 5 and possibly making the series 3-2, thus giving them much more leverage going into Game 6 and closing out the series. But so far, I really didn't expect the Timberwolves to lose at home twice, especially after their ridiculous performances in the previous game. But in game 3 in particular, the rest of the team shot very poorly, and they just weren't ready for the Denver Nuggets in that moment. And this shows just how good the coaching staff for the Denver Nuggets really is, because they were given a much longer break than the rest of the teams before Game 3 even started. And I said on the previous podcast that break could be the difference maker in this series, because good coaches and good teams, when they're given enough time, excuse me, when these teams, the good teams, are given enough time to come up with a strategy, to come up with a game plan, then it could really change the outcome of the series, because then they'll have multiple different ways to stop what's going on or to improve on what they've been lacking. And going into Game 4, the Timberwolves, they played a lot better than they did in Game 3, but it still wasn't enough. Anthony Edwards, he had 44 points in Game 4, and he played 45 minutes. Excuse me. So he played 45 minutes. He only sat out 1 minute and was able to get 44 points. That is very, very good performance coming in from him. But he was basically the only scorer for the Timberwolves. Karl-Anthony Towns, he shot very poorly from the field, 5 of 18 with 13 points. Mike Conley also played very poorly, 5 of 12 for 15 points. And Rudy Gobert barely did anything for the Timberwolves and their offense. So with all of this in mind, the Timberwolves are in very big trouble. And it's really bad for this Timberwolves team. Now, Jokic, he ended the game 35-7-7, but he wasn't the player of the game for the Denver Nuggets. It was actually Aaron Gordon. Aaron Gordon, he ended the game with 27 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists, and he only missed 1 shot in the entire game. And Rudy Gobert had some comments about it. He said that Aaron Gordon, he turned into Kobe Bryant in that series and in that game. And I mean, in reality, I mean, yeah, that was basically damn near a Kobe Bryant performance. I mean, Kobe obviously he wouldn't shoot that perfect from the field given his shot selection, but that was a very very big performance from a third option that they desperately needed. Similar to how when Kobe was on LA and he was the second option behind Shaq in 2000, when Shaq got fouled out in a very crucial point in the game, Kobe delivered and was like, "I got this." So it's similar to that. Ooh, Eric is in the chat. If you guys don't remember Eric, he's the host of the wrestling podcast. He was recently on my show last week, and he does have something to say in the chat. Denver reminds me of the Spurs under Tim Duncan and Greg Popovich, and he's honestly, I mean, that's not too far off from a good comparison. I mean, the Nuggets, they have a very dominant center who runs a lot of the offense. The Spurs had a very dominant center / power forward. Call Tim Duncan what you want. He was a center. He was also a power forward. So there's really like no wrong answer in the position that he plays. In my opinion, he could do both phenomenally. I feel like the one reason why Tim Duncan is considered a power forward is because it looks a lot better on his resume, calling him the greatest power forward to ever live. Because if you were to put him in the center conversation, there's actual debate on who the greatest center is. And honestly, he could fit the bill for the greatest center as well and have a good argument against Kareem, or Shaq, or Bill Russell, or any of those other centers that played. But yeah, and not only that, but they also have similar pieces on the team as well as having their version of Tim Duncan. Jamal Murray, he could be considered like the version of Tony Parker for this Denver Nuggets team, as well as the other role players that play very very well under this system. Because I understand that like Jokic is dropping all of these numbers and so is Jamal, but it's still like a team-based system, and a lot of these players, like, they just play better under that system. Now, call it what you want. Call it Jokic's system. Call it the Nuggets system. Regardless, it is a system, and they're thriving in it. And that's the important thing. But now that the series is tied 2-2, the Denver Nuggets are expected to play the Timberwolves tomorrow at home. So we'll see if they can capitalize on the home court advantage this time, as opposed to last time where they couldn't. And we'll see just how far this series can go. But the Nuggets, they're fighting. Like, they're definitely still one of the teams that you should be worried about. And I know a lot of the hype is around the Timberwolves because of how ridiculous Anthony Edwards has been performing, and just how good he is as a player, especially in the postseason. But right now, the Nuggets, they might give them a run for their money. Like, winning those first two games was really impressive, but, like, the honeymoon's over now, at least in Denver's perspective. So, assuming that the Nuggets can play just as well as they did in this game than they did in the last game, that's going to determine on who's going to win in this series. Because, if I'm going to be honest, this Timberwolves team, it doesn't really seem to have that much of it doesn't seem to have a consistent second option. I mean, like, it's supposed to be Karl Anthony Towns, but it's like, to me, he's a little meh in the postseason. I mean, last time he was in the postseason and he was also the second option when he was with Jimmy Butler. He had like 5 points in a playoff game and an elimination game, and I don't know. He just doesn't seem like the kind of guy to me that would be a valuable second option. And, I mean, given what happened in the previous game where he shot horribly from the field, I mean, going 5 of 18 from the field and 13 points as the second option is unacceptable. It's unacceptable by any means. And it's really, really difficult for me to, like, see him as the second option. So it's like, just a little bit. And there's nothing more that really needs to be said. I mean, Karl Anthony Towns, he just needs to step up in this game. And it's the fact that they're like right now they're really close in the series. And this put the Timberwolves in a really, really bad hole. Because now they're going into Denver, and now that Denver has already made the adjustments that they needed and played away, there's a slight chance that the series might be over before it even starts. But that's all I really have to say about this series. So now we will go ahead and go into the fourth segment where I talk about Dallas and OKC and their playoff series and where they're standing in right now. So I will be right back after this short break.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.